Brekkie Show, a game day buffet on Super Bowl Monday. I am very lucky to be joined by two very special guests on this fine day. I'll say it's a little cloudy in Sydney. I'm here at the Sporting Globe in Darling Harbour in Sydney, New South Wales, finest city in Australia. But I'm joined by a very special guest today. Returning to the show, NFL Nation's own Cincinnati Bengals reporter, Ben Baby, a man who has had plenty of up-close and personal looks at the Kansas City Chiefs in some big spots, being on that Cincinnati beat the last couple of years, and a man whose own Super Bowl game day plans have had a little bit of a changeover. They've been scuttled quicker than the top order of the Australian test lineup, because after the Super Bowl, Ben was planning to dig into day 5 of the cricket, but that is not the case, Ben. You're left having to come up with a new game script, perhaps as quickly as some of these head coaches might in this showdown later today.
Yeah, foolish for me to think that match was getting to day 5, since Australians don't know how to hit spin, but luckily we'll be able to digest a lot of good football content today.
All right, and joining for the first time, this man is a multi-platform minister of good vibes, Miguel Echegaray. Thank you very much for joining us all the way from the fine city of New York. If I'm going to sit here and brag about Sydney being the finest city in Australia, New York, for me, the finest city in the world, thank you very much for joining us.
Now, well, at this point, you're winning, Laurie, because you're in Sydney. It's the morning. You can have some breakfast. It's nice and sunny, I presume. And I'm like, ready and braving the freezing cold in New York City. So you take the advantage, my friend. A pleasure to be here.
Oh, look, the weather is always something we tend to lean on. We're pretty far away down here in Australia. It is Monday morning. I hope folks out there, look, let's be honest. If you're working today, I'm sorry, but let's be honest. You're probably going to be taking a little easy on the workload. Maybe have that second screen up. A few more coffee breaks than usual with your phone out, tuning in on ESPN. 10:30 a.m. We've got the Super Bowl kicking off. 9 a.m. Make sure you check in, as we've got my usual co-host Phil Murphy and Charlie Arnold on the sideline there with a special pre-game show. So make sure you're spotting on that 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. I want to get into it right off the bat, guys. Let's talk X factors and game breakers. What is a player that you're keeping an eye on? Maybe a contest, but a number that you've got your eye on out there, a jersey that we need to be spying that you think could be a difference maker. Ben, I'll throw it to you first. Which name comes to mind when you think X factor in this contest?
For me, I have to go with Chris Jones on that Kansas City defensive line. And Laurie, let me tell you why. In the regular season, we all know what Jalen Hurts did well. Now, the one thing when you're looking at it is that he was vastly different when he was under pressure. In fact, when you take his QBR splits when he was under pressure and when he was not, it was the third biggest differential, meaning that it was about 60 points lower when he was under pressure. And we know that Kansas City defensive line has struggled at times to get after the quarterback. Unfortunately for the Cincinnati Bengals, that's not something they can say, because Joe Burrow was under duress a ton. And I'll be honest, had he not been under pressure early and been able to settle in, maybe I am working in Phoenix today instead of being in Cincinnati. So shout out to that Kansas City defensive line for maybe pushing them into the offseason a little bit earlier. So Bengals fans will have a gripe about how good that Kansas City pass rush is. But we know what Frank Clark brings to the table. But I think whatever Chris Jones does, if he can get after Jalen Hurts a good amount, I think that could be a potential game changer.
I think when you think Chris Jones, someone who was in contention for Defensive Player of the Year, and had that not been an award that cuts off really around the end of the regular season, if this was an award that stretched into the playoffs, wonder how much, look, the voting was very strong for Nick Bosa. Wonder how much the voting takes a little different look, considering how dominant Jones has been getting through that postseason sack hoodoo, compared to Nick Bosa, who didn't have his most, outlandish, stats or showings in the matchups that the San Francisco 49ers had, as the volume picks up around me. LME, we're talking X factors. Who comes to mind for you?
Well, listen, before we get into it very quickly, I think it's important to note that this Super Bowl, for a while now, I'm looking back in the past seasons, the past years, and I think that this Super Bowl has the potential to be one of the greatest, honestly, because it's been a very long time. And I know, Laurie, later on, you're going to get into the odds. I think it's been a very long time since we've seen such even teams, offensively attractive, Jalen Hurts on one side, Pat Mahomes on the other one, defensively great, as Ben was talking about from the Chiefs perspective. There are so many tangibles and intangibles that could make this one of the greatest. And, we'll get into the odds in a second, but I really feel it's that good. When you're talking about game changers, just like Ben was talking about the Chiefs side, and I'm glad that we were talking defensively speaking, we got to talk about Hassan Reddick. I mean, the fact that he was voted 4th in Defensive Player of the Year, to me, is kind of a joke. He really was so good. So good. The fact that the Eagles led in sacks, 78, including the playoffs. Hassan Reddick is a massive factor towards that. He forces fumbles better than anybody I've seen in recent time when it comes to the NFL. And I think that this is the big component, I think. The Chiefs, right, the last time they won the Super Bowl and they got killed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they had a lot of issues protecting Mahomes, right? They did a lot of business trying to make sure that that's not going to happen heading into this game. But here's the problem. Hassan Reddick normally goes on the left side, right? And he's going to be pretty much facing Andrew Wiley, who really is the only remaining lineman from that Tampa Bay loss and pretty much one of the weakest ones in that line. So can the Chiefs protect Mahomes from Hassan Reddick? If Hassan Reddick has a massive game, a great game, then this is the Eagles' win all around it. But Pat Mahomes can defend himself. It's just that I'm looking to see if Reddick can be that X factor.
That battle on the line of scrimmage to keep Patrick Mahomes upright, clean, and operating on schedule at his will is going to be one of the biggest key points to see. Is this different? You don't have to go far back. You don't have to tell me about the scenes of Patrick Mahomes running for his life behind that haggard Chiefs line with Tampa Bay Buccaneers defensive front herring after him, trying to pull off some of the most miraculous throws we've ever seen, as you can see
and now
on
with
my
an ankle
T-shirt
sprain
right now.
As well, Laurie.
And now 3 weeks, 1 week removed is harder to do than 3 weeks removed, but still, this is, as we know, high ankle sprains these days, it's closer to that 6, 8, even 10 weeks to feel fully right again. He's obviously not a wide receiver planning to get in and out of cuts like someone like when Jerry Jeudy had a very nasty high ankle sprain, and you think the mechanics that go into his position, but in those key moments when it gets messy around your legs in the pocket, or when you're scrambling outside trying to put that unique kind of slippery, elastic kind of elusiveness that we get from Patrick Mahomes, you have to think that will still be a factor even with a couple more weeks extra rest. For me, X factor time. Look, we've been talking defense, so why change the tune? Out of the University of Missouri, in Kansas City now, at the linebacker spot, Nick Bolton. That's who I've got my eyes on because I think tackling is going to be so consequential today. That sounds boring and simplistic, but you need to be tackling well against this Eagles team. Hidden yards, bonus yards, extra yardage after contact if you slip off tackles is going to be crushing and has proven to be crushing against that Eagles offense, because once they get into that short yardage, if you give them that extra 1, 2, 3, 4 yards on a carry, they get short yardage. They're so situationally dominant that you're putting yourself so far behind the 8 ball. I think that starts with the players like Nick Bolton coming down at that second level, making solid contact in that run game, particularly whether it's Sanders, whether it's Gainwell, whether it's Hurts keeping the ball himself. That tackling and that element of the game, that physicality that's been so improved in the Kansas City Chiefs of late, and we have seen stronger showings from Steve Spagnuolo's unit, that needs to be on point again. All right, that covers the X factors for us. Now we're going to go to some players that are even a little younger, a little earlier in their NFL careers. With our rookie segment, it's time for Toughest Rookies, brought to you by the Ford Everest. Conquer every day in the Ford Everest. Guys, we're looking across these two rosters. We're looking rookies that could stand out and really make a name for themselves, elevate, whether that's on offense, defense, hey, maybe even special teams. There's been a lot of talk about both sides of the ball. Let's not forget that forgotten third side of the ball, special teams that could prove difference makers here. Rookies across the board. And I'll throw it to you first. What name jumps out to you?
For me, one of the interesting ones in this game is going to be rookie Trent McDuffie, who will be on debut in the Super Bowl. You notice how I pronounce it, how y'all pronounce it over there. We pronounce it debut over here, but we will keep the boo there. And for Kansas City, that secondary, it's going to be such a fascinating matchup. I believe L'Jarius Sneed will be back for this game. He got injured in that game against Cincinnati in the AFC title game. And getting Sneed back, having McDuffie there will be critical. We know how explosive this Philadelphia Eagles offense is when you look at what Jalen Hurts has done. And with his 2-star receivers in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And we know that, if you're going to have Sneed on one side, you're going to also have another quarterback who will be able to help take away maybe some of that part of the field. And I think we talked about Steve Spagnuolo earlier, the Kansas City defensive coordinator. I thought he did a tremendous job in limiting Cincinnati's offense that had been really good. And I think that when you look at how Hurts has operated this year, you look at how good that Eagles offense has been. If McDuffie is going to be a big hindrance in that pass defense, the Eagles will exploit that, and they are going to need that rookie to step up. I believe I heard T. Higgins praising the fact that even though Kansas City has such a young secondary, they have played well throughout the last several weeks, and McDuffie and that unit will be one to watch today.
All right, LMA with young players who have a chance to, maybe they even didn't even start their campaign this season. Their rookie campaign, it took a little time to get going. This is the grandest stage. We've seen rookies stand out and have huge showings in this spotlight before. Who's the next name that's going to etch their own digits, their own jersey number, their own numerals in the history books of great rookie performances in the Super Bowl?
Well, Laurie, I got to give a shout out to Ben, because before taping, me, all of us three were talking about who we're going to talk about in regards to the rookie to watch and everybody. And I think this name is clearly the winner. But Ben, because he's such a good-natured man, shout out to Cincinnati. He gave it to me. So I'm going to stick with this because we all in agreement, right? Listen, one of the things, Philadelphia doesn't have many weaknesses. But one weakness, if you're talking about it from a relative standpoint, is defending against the run. Right? On the other side, Andy Reid, right? He has Pat Mahomes, the Swiss Army knife of the NFL. And sometimes he forgets that he can run the ball as well. And he has some reliable people. Introducing, of course, Isaiah Pacheco from Jersey, right? The fact that, by the way, he has some Puerto Rican and Dominican blood also makes me proud. Part of La Cultura, one of the only Afro-Latinos in the league. So you got to give that up as well. But to me, Pacheco is very important in this. He played a season-high 57% of the offensive snaps in the win over the Bengals. And he's done a great job as a receiver, as a runner, and with pass protection as well. So Andy Reid now has somebody. When we're talking about the likes of Hassan Reddick and that Eagles nasty press, that horrible rush, at least he has somebody reliable like Pacheco who's going to take care of business. He's going to be massive. So watch out for him. When Pat Mahomes and that ankle sprain, and he doesn't want to be too mobile, at least at the very beginning, he needs a reliable person. Of course, McKinnon does very well, specifically in the end zone, but Isaiah Pacheco, who played nearly 60% of these offensive snaps against the Bengals, watch out for him for making a very big impact.
I think when you look at that Eagles defensive front, so many big names, so much talent. You mentioned so many sacks, but this is a team that only rushes 4. Predominant, they're not a big blitz team. They're not going to send linebackers herring after Mahomes over and over again, that Eagles team and what you've got on that side of the ball. They do drop in a zone a bunch. There is that area underneath where you could see that passing game work for those running backs. You mentioned Pacheco, could be McKinnon, but I think Pacheco, with the explosiveness, the anger that he runs with, it's something you definitely want to be featuring the Kansas City Chiefs if you are looking at shorter area of the field and looking for that max yak opportunity. Okay, you guys are taking the 2 big headliners. We've talked a lot of Chiefs ball so far. That's the team that boasts the most amount of rookies. For me, if I'm looking at my toughest rookie to stand out here, someone who had a big play against the Bengals. Bengals fans thought it absolutely should have been flagged for an illegal block that wasn't picked up. Look at Sky Moore. Some Sky Moore opportunities. A versatile weapon can be used in the passing game, can make an impact on special teams, is certainly capable to receive direct handoffs out of the backfield. I think Sky Moore I don't think he's had the most explosive year. He hasn't had stats that blow you away. But the opportunities that he's given, some downfield chances, mentioned the work on return duty, he has shown plenty of explosion ability. That was a pivotal return that he had up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Could we see that come to the fold again? You guys did take the headliners there. I'm on board with both McDuffie and Pacheco, who were number 1 and 2 in my on my draft board for this segment. But I'm more than happy to turn to Sky Moore, 2 Ys, and perhaps a couple of big plays in this one. Okay.
And you're the pro, Laurie, so you know you got other people in your back pocket, so you can take care of business.
We're talking big players, we're talking rookies, talking big moments, big decisions. Some of the big decisions that Australian fans around the world, but certainly Australian fans, and they're starting to pour in over here now. I can see Aaron Rodgers jersey, Joe Burrow, Eli Manning is getting a run. Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah!
It's all happening. And Lamar Jackson jersey represented here as well. Big decisions for fans surrounds the menu, your choices on the day. Are you going for max flavor? Are you going for longevity? Are you risking a carb-induced early sleep? Could that come about? So I'm here at the Sporting Globe in Darling Harbour, as I mentioned, in Sydney. I've got the menu right here. So I've got they've got the warm-ups. A few of the starters are going to populate tables around this venue. I'm going to read a couple, and I want from either you guys top 2 power rankings of the options you'd be going for. So we'll start with the mac and cheese bites. Mozzarella sticks, not anything unfamiliar to yourselves. Salt and pepper calamari. Now we're talking a little more Australian flavor. Pulled pork sliders. Chicken palm sliders, which, if you don't know, there's a big debate in Australia about whether it's palmy or parma. I know in the States it's usually chicken palm, so I'll speak your language for today. We've got buffalo loaded nachos and cheeseburger loaded fries. From that hellacious half dozen or baker's half dozen that I just outlined, plenty of flavor on board. Ben, what are you going with? Do you have 1? Do you have 2 options that stand out? just blinking lights on your draft board?
Yeah, I think the two easy no-brainers, I'm going the pulled pork sliders and the calamari. And let me tell you why. You do not want to have a lot of sticky substances on your hands as you're maneuvering between checking your phone, grabbing a beverage, maybe saying hello to other people. You just don't need a lot of stuff, a lot of texture on your hands. And the pulled pork sliders, because of their size, you're able to get as much of food as you want, and it is a solid amount. And the pork by nature, not going to be heavy. And then the calamari and nice offset give you some crunch on your plate to get you a little zest as well, a little salt and pepper action. That's where I'm going with. I am staying away from the mac and cheese bites because like you said, that is a recipe to be falling asleep before Rihanna takes the stage.
See, that's game planning, that's thought, that's strategy. That's the level you get from someone on the beat, a true NFL reporter who's in and around the game, in and around the culture of the sport, day in, day out. LMA, I'm turning to you now. Do you agree with those takes? Is there any crossover there? Or have you gone a completely different direction with your menu choices?
No, you know what, man? Ben dropped the mic with that one, especially in terms of preparations for Rihanna, because I want to be 1,000% awake when she puts on the replay and we all just go absolutely nuts. So absolutely, you're going to be very specific about the type of food that you want to eat leading up, not just for the game, but for the entirety of the show. Listen, I'm Peruvian, right? So I love my seafood, and I think calamari is an absolute win. That's going to be in my power rankings. And because you're in Sydney, I'm imagining it's pretty damn good, Laurie. So I really have to go pretty high up with that one. We have something in Peru called conchitas a la parmesana, where we put parmesan cheese in our seafood. I'm telling you, don't knock it till you try it. So make sure that you do that one. Now, in the other ones, I like the pork sliders, but I think I'm going to venture to go with the parm one. What was it? The chicken parm sliders?
Yeah, the barbecue parm sliders.
This is very determinant of the type of chicken that you're giving me. No, because if I don't like it, that's it. I know Ben's shaking his head, man, but listen, pork sliders to me, that could put me to sleep as well, by the way. That could put me to sleep as well. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Just keep it simple, keep it heavy, and bring me that Rihanna.
Here's the thing. The chicken parm sliders, I like it in theory, but you know the sauce and the cheese is going to be too much. You're going to be out. Upon the replay is going to come on. She's going to go with what's my name. You ain't going to be around for any of it because the chicken parm is going to be sitting too heavy in your stomach.
I'll take the gamble, Ben. I'll take the gamble.
I would say with breakfast, it's often wise, especially if you're going to enjoy the day, enjoy the frivolities, enjoy some beverages, might be wise to line the stomach with a bit of protein and carbs. Maybe it's the early option, the chicken parm sliders. I can't go past them. They're right at the top for me as well. And look, you mentioned the produce, the seafood down here. You're wondering about the quality of chicken. Look, there's a couple of things you get Australians really snobby about. It's our produce, it's our seafood, and it's our coffee. Some of our American friends, our colleagues from ESPN that were over in Perth at UFC 284 yesterday, I got DMs asking, what on earth is this coffee culture? What is this liquid gold you're pouring into my cup? We're very snobby about a few things.
That makes me happy.
Certainly one of them.
That makes me happy. I'm all in.
Salt and pepper calamari is my number 2 pick as well after the chicken parm sliders. Okay, I'm feeling hungry already. This is starting to fill up. The music is starting to lift. We got a couple of minutes left here. So we're going around about on some picks. Before we do that, we're going to go for a quick odds check brought to you by TAB. It's brought to you by TAB's Bet Friends. You can bet, tip, banter with your bet friends. Download the app, follow along, follow your favorite team, start your own teams with your mates. But remember, guys, please gamble responsibly. If you're going to have a punt responsibly. Gamblers Help's available on 1-800-858-858. Odds are subject to change. The odds right now, as of this morning, little bit of movement for the Chiefs coming in. They were sitting above $2, above 2-1 in most Australian markets, down about $1.95 right now. That's the number. Whereas the Philadelphia Eagles out to 185, still the favorites. Just a little bit of a change there, just a little bit of movement. I wonder if the Mahomes energy is coursing through the nation at the moment, those watching, those tuning in, those invested and interested. For you guys, let's go. Let's get down to it. The nitty-gritty, picks time, predictions, who's going to win and why. Ben, you've had the opening remarks the whole time, so I'm going to give LME the first one here. Sir, which way is this game going and why?
A lot of pressure here, Laurie. All right, listen, for a long time I've been thinking about this, and I end this with the way that I started. We are, I think, in the midst of possibly seeing one of the best Super Bowls ever, just because it's so even, offensively minded, two fantastic quarterbacks. We haven't even talked about the Kelsey brothers. We haven't even talked about the potential in the air. We haven't even talked about the coaching and, of course, what special teams could do in this game. I see it as a high-scoring game, not as high as we may think. But at the end of the day, talent overrides everything. And I think that extra week of care for Pat Mahomes' ankle will do a little bit of an advantage. And by the way, I'm a huge, well, no, I'm not a huge Eagles fan. I'm a Giants fan. But I am a huge Jalen Hurts fan. But their playoff run was much easier than the Chiefs. And I want to really believe that I think that will be the determinant. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs 30-27. It's going to overtime, baby.
Ben, can you match that level of spice? Are we going to see overtime? Which way is this thing going?
Listen, Laurie, let me tell you, I once played a 4-man golf scramble with Patrick Mahomes Sr., and he stepped up to the tee box one time, and me and my buddies were watching him. He said, I'm going to put a little cheat sheet on this. And sure enough, he did. And I expect his son today, Patrick Mahomes, to do the same thing. We've seen what he's been able to do. He's had one of the best seasons in NFL history. Even though you took away Tyreek Hill, he still made it work with MVS, with Sky Moore, with Kadarius Toney. Patrick Mahomes is cheat sheet for days, and I'm expecting him and that Kansas City team to go out there. I think they're going to get a really tough test because that Eagles front, like LME talked about, very good, number one in the regular season in pass rush win rate. But I do think that Mahomes and Kansas City pull this one out.
I'm going to say this loud for the Eagles fans that are starting to fill out here. We've got a sweep here. Kansas City Chiefs for me. I've got it 33-24. Without leaving, I can't get away from talking about the Australians quickly. Jordan Mailata, a big factor there. That offensive front for the Philadelphia Eagles. The run game, as well as the quality and the pass protection. He himself, Jordan Mailata, has picked up as a pass protector in the playoffs, really elevated from you look at the metrics, our pass block win rate, brought to you by ESPN, curated by the phenomenal stats and info analytics team here. That had him leveling up from like 84% win rate in pass pro up towards 6% in the playoffs. Can the Chiefs overcome that? Can they cause disruption? A lot of talk about on both sides of the ball in those trenches. Way more talk about the Eagles' fronts, both the offensive line and defensive line. But I think let's not sleep. Talked about Chris Jones a lot before. Let's not sleep on just how big that pass rush and Steve Spagnuolo, when he chooses to blitz, when he chooses to heat Jalen Hurts up, if they're successful there. Ben mentioned early, the numbers show and the eye test shows there's a bit of a distinct drop-off. Can Hurts overcome that? We will see. The battle-tested nature of it, I think it's a fair point. Doesn't matter when you get here healthy. The Eagles are a talented roster they've got here. The Cattle's looking very, very healthy. The roster's looking good. Does it matter that you haven't been battle-tested? We're going to find out, but I'm going to go leaning towards Patrick Mahomes, a better offensive line, an underrated defense. And I'm just going to say my closing remark will be this. As we head on out of here, we've gone past the 23-minute mark now. Funny that you mentioned 23. My dad's a hooper from way back, and even though I was born in 88, he had me watching Michael Jordan in his prime by the time I was 5, 6, 7 years old. He's also someone who got me into golf at a young age, so I watched prime Tiger Woods in the late 90s, early 2000s. Now, I'm not putting Patrick Mahomes on that trajectory and that level just yet, but when you are watching greatness, when you're watching total, overwhelming, and unique level of play, don't hide from it. Don't be bored from it. Don't cast it off for something else. Just embrace it. I think that's what we've seen Patrick Mahomes through 5 seasons as the starting quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs with Andy Reid. We know the 5 AFC Championship games, a chance to get 2 MVPs and 2 Super Bowl rings in those first 5 years. We're talking about unprecedented levels. Adds the centerpiece of the offense. Talk about some of the greats in the past. That wasn't always the case early in their career. This man could be on a trajectory for something totally new. We could be having a very different conversation about Patrick Mahomes in a week's time. The man gets number 2. Once you get to 3 and 4, if he's lucky to do that, now we're having some real big chats about that Mount Rushmore, that top tier, those power rankings at the top of greatest quarterbacks of all time. But first and foremost, he's got to go get Super Bowl ring number 2. I think he does that today. That's my final call. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here. It's building up here. The noise is getting to a dull to raucous roar at this point. That might just be the cue for beverages as people are enjoying themselves early in the morning. My big thanks to everybody that tuned in and watched, and my huge appreciation and thanks to both LME and Ben for joining me. Guys, I hope you have a phenomenal day. For For Ben, for LME, I've been Laurie Horesh. Make sure you tune in to catch Phil and Charlie's sideline from 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time with the Super Bowl pregame show, kickoff around 10:30 a.m., all on ESPN. This has been a very special episode of the NFL Brekkie Show, our Super Bowl game day buffet brought to you by Ford Everest. Conquer each and every day in the Ford Everest. Thanks for joining, and we will see you next time.